Welcome to ClayShareCon 2025, day 4. I know, can you believe day 4? So quick it goes by. But we have something spectacular for you next. We have Nikki from Ceramica Transfer. She's coming to us from our friends in the north. And she has some amazing underglaze transfers. If you haven't checked them out yet, go check them out. Also, she is the one who has been doing the giveaway of 100 sheets of underglaze transfers every day. We gave away 100 on Wednesday. We gave away 100 on Thursday. Gave away 100 last night. That was Friday. And Saturday, we're going to give away another 100. Whew, that's a lot. So she's got some cool tips and techniques for you, and she's going to share them with you right now. So we're going to go check in with her. Hey, Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I am so happy you're here with us for ClayShareCon.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be with you guys and honored that you invited me to come back. So thanks so much for having me. So today, my goal is to talk about, oftentimes I get questions from folks about how to add color to their transfers. I don't know if you've had a chance to look, but on my website, in my catalog of transfers, I mostly do black and white transfers because I want to add color in other areas, or with underglazes over top of the transfers or under. But that's really my goal here today, is to talk about how we can add color and bring our transfers to life with our bots. So I think I'm going to start off by doing kind of a little bit of show and tell before I get into the demo. And as part of that, it'll kind of lead into what I'm going to demo today. So let's start off with this one. So one of the things that I like to do when it comes to color transfers is doing like a tone on tones. So for this one, it's actually, I believe, Cherry Blossom from Amico, the Celadon, with the red underneath. So it kind of gives you a bit of a tone on tone there. So it just softens it up a little bit. But I've done it with a bunch of different ones. So like the green on the green and blue on blue. Like it turns out really great, and it's a really kind of a nice soft classic look. It's not too in your face. We have colored transfers as an option to bring color into your work while using transfers. This is fun, but not my favorite. My favorite is 100% painting and getting more in depth with the piece. So here we have a piece that I painted here with underglaze. So in this case, a lot of people, I want to say, who haven't tried it yet, get a little bit nervous when it comes to adding underglaze over your transfer. But that's my favorite way to do it, because you know where the lines are, and it's like, it's almost cathartic because it's like an adult coloring book. So in this case here, I added the transfer at leather hard, and I bisked my piece. I tend to rinse the piece out before I do anything with it to ensure that any excess pigment has come off before I start brushing, because the last thing you want is to have smudges on your piece. And then I just water down some underglaze. I particularly use the one strokes because they're very concentrated. I believe they're similar to Colors for Earth, probably. So something like that, and then I add even a little bit. I water it down a little bit so that it's not overpowering, and the iron from the black transfer pops through in those circumstances. So you don't have to worry about necessarily going over the line if you don't have a bit of an unsteady hand. So you can see here, I missed the line by a little bit, but you can still see it pop through. So then that leads us to kind of what I'm looking at showing today. So today I'm showing what I call my button mug, or a badge mug, some people would call it. So essentially it's an additional piece added to a mug. And what that does for you is it gives you the opportunity to add texture, or to add other glazes in the background that maybe have a lot more movement than what you might be used to. So for instance, if I were to use, I'm not sure, give me a runny glaze. Let's say something combined with like winterwood or a honey flux, which, you know, could potentially run all down your imagery. This will give you kind of a bit of a border, in order to stop it from running over your imagery, but allowing you to still add exciting glazes to your transfer work. Does that make sense?
It
Am I going
absolutely
too
does.
fast?
Yeah. No, this is, I know you got 30 minutes. I don't want you to feel rushed.
It's okay. I also have some like the magic of TV pieces, so the demo shouldn't be too long. So here's another piece where I did I painted it in, but in this case I did what I call the reverse. Yeah. So this is what I did. Like I call this part a reverse button. So instead of having the button on top, I actually carved it out so that if my glaze were to drip, it has a little catchment there in order to prevent it from covering my imagery. And then, so what we're going to do today is this, which is a combination of the below and the button mug that we have there. And essentially it's, I'm going to do the carved imagery on the button, and then where we paint in the image. So it's using the transfer in a different way. It's using it as more of a template to carve it and add texture to your piece, but also be able to use whatever kind of glaze you want, to accompany it, whether it's drippy or not. So you have basically full freedom with your glazing. Okay. All right. So let's start off here. So if you notice on this mug, what I did was I hand built it and I used a texture mat to create the texture around it in order to get some excitement on my piece. In this case, so you can use this technique whether it be hand built or thrown. I threw these mugs a few days ago. And essentially what I do as far as the button is I will take into consideration what my piece size is here. So I'll just grab one of the rounds and determine how big an edge, like how big a frame that I want for the piece. So in this case, I'll probably grab this imagery, but I've planned this adventure collection and this golden hour sheet, you know, with the intentions of being able to carve some out and kind of work in different techniques with it. So let's see here. So like anything else, I'll score the piece. When we're joining, we want to make sure that we have a nice rough space to connect to. And you can do this on both sides of your piece. I typically will do it as a right-handed, or I'll choose to do a left-handed mug, so I'll just use one side, especially if I have texture, because in that sense, there's other stuff going on the rest of the piece. So I'm just kind of making little marks so I know where to abrade my surface so that it connects. So one of the things you should keep in mind when making this type of mug with connections, and one of the things that I had to learn the hard way along the way, was when you're connecting pieces, like leave it under the plastic for a few days so that the excuse me, the clay moisture content can really like come to the same content, like the attachment pieces all be kind of homogenized and get to the same moisture content. That way they're not drying at different rates, and that'll help prevent any cracking and splitting of your piece, and also to do with warping as well, right? Because we don't like to have round mugs, I like to think anyway.
So folks want to know, how thick do you make your attachment piece?
So I take it down to, I want to say, I work in centimeters, so just under half a centimeter. I want to say about 1/4 of an inch is safe. You don't want to go too thick, because the challenge is, if you go too thick, is that you're gonna, like, as it dries, if it pulls your mug, as it dries, if it pulls your mug a bit, then you're gonna warp your mug, which I've had happen and learned the hard way. So a thin little disc is great, and before you start letting it dry to the air, make sure you leave it for a couple days under the plastic, so that it can really really get in tune with the moisture content of the main piece, and ensure that you don't have any cracking or warping. All right, so I'm just trying to smooth out the edges here. You can use the sponge. I just happened to grab a paintbrush. All right. So we're pretty attached here. You can see here I've smoothed all the edges. I'm gonna grab my scissors and pretend that I'm cutting this out. And then move to my next piece. So on the next piece, I used a slightly different transfer. And then we'll move back to the transfer I initially intended. So here we go. Through the magic of TV, we have this transfer that we've applied just now. It's had an opportunity to sit under the plastic for a bit. And you also want to make sure that it's a good leather hard before you start carving. Otherwise, you might have some challenges with carving. So here we go. Pardon me if my hands might be a little bit unsteady, because I have a little bit of nerves, but so essentially, oh, I'm just gonna sit down. I'll make it a bit easier. So essentially, I'm just using the transfer as a guide in order to take out the line. And now this is a diamond core cutter. They have some awesome tools that. Okay, sorry guys. So yeah, I'm not sure if you missed the last comment, but diamond core has some great tools that work really well for this kind of work. Okay.
So we'll go to the front. Sometimes if you kick out of that and come back in, it will work again. But so we lost the overhead camera for that. But we got Nikki on the front camera. So you're just going to follow your lines and carve the design using them as a guide.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm following my lines here. I'm using them as a guide in order to create like little, like almost like grout in the background, like you would have on a tile. So then we'll move to my next piece, since you don't need to watch me carve the whole thing. I think you guys have the idea. Um, so once the piece is carved, you're kind of left with the design in relief here, the opposite of what you had before. So your lines are carved out, and it gives you kind of the opportunity that you could do. You could actually glaze.
Yeah.
What's that?
It looks great. It looks
thank
great.
you.
It looks great. It looks great.
So you could actually use a glaze that shows a lot of texture with this kind of situation. Or what I like to do is I have these little squeeze bottles, and I use them to flood the area. That's how I got this kind of effect where it's fully painted in.
We're going to see if we get the overhead back on for everybody so you can see she's got some detail work. It's locked up.
Do you want me to try and log back in?
Oh, it came back on.
Oh, okay, great.
I mean, hopefully it'll stay.
Sorry,
she is in another country, and that could be part of it. No, I'm just
I like to.
It's so cold.
Some technology up here. We're not using the string and cans up here yet, but yeah. So essentially, you're left with this relief. So you could use a like a glaze that shows a lot of texture, or what I was saying is what I like to do is grab these squeeze bottles and actually flood this area, and that gives you this effect here that you see on the other piece. You see me?
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, what I decided to use for this one and for the example one is cafe colors. I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know if you guys remember Dunkin' Concepts. It was like they used to have a product. Dunkin' used to have a product that was like a hybrid underglaze, and this is very similar to that, where it has some sheen. It's not an underglaze that you could put underneath anything because it would stick to your shelves. But what I like about it is it has really good coverage and a great color range. I do cover it with zinc-free clear after I'm done. Like once it's dried up, I covered this one with the zinc-free clear so that you get that really nice sheen. But it's a great product for this kind of a project.
So it's from a company called Cafe.
It's Chrysanthos Colors.
Chrysanthos.
Yeah,
okay.
it's a family business out of Australia. And yeah, they're out of Australia. They have great products. They'll be at Zika as well this year for anyone going.
We'll be there.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you in person.
So her company is Ceramica Transfers. You can get these transfers from there and do this technique or many other designs that she has. So check them out. She's in Canada, which I think is fabulous because we have a bunch of members in Canada, and I would love to get more companies and sponsors involved from our neighbors in the north so that all of our Canadian members are represented. So that'll be my goal for NCECA. You'll have to introduce me to all your fellow Canadian companies so I can be like, hey.
I'm down for that challenge.
Yeah, it's a good plan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, like once you finish this, then you can add it at bisque, the color at bisque or at glaze. In this instance, I added it at bisque, but I'm doing it here at leather hardened. It's just fine. Does anyone have any questions? Like, open up the floor. Talk to me. What
Yeah,
do you?
we've got some questions. So some folks have had issues with the underglaze transfer smearing after it's been bisque fired. Do you have
Yeah,
any tips for folks to prevent that?
absolutely. So the type of transfers that I carry are very pigmented. And so my suggestion and what I find works best is if I take them to a cone 04, but also I rinse them after this. It's just always been a best practice of mine because sometimes your bisque gets dusty along the way. You don't want your glaze to crawl. So I do that, but I specifically do that when I'm working with transfers so that any excess pigment that hasn't cured to the piece is then kind of washed away. And there's less likelihood of smearing, but you still generally need to be careful that you're not like directly like rubbing the piece.
And so folks are wondering, do you still have the fishy transfers?
I do. I'm not carrying them currently in every color, but they are available still in black. If there's something that you have a request for, I'm always open to hear it. So just let me know and I can see what I can do about working it out for you.
And which diamond core tool was it that you were using to do your carving?
I want to say it was PV. It's the one.
The P1?
Yeah, the
Right.
P1, but I think it's like PV8 maybe because it's the palm version. Like it's
Yes.
just a
Yes.
little guy. I have baby hands and thought that this might be
It'd
best for
be a
me
good
to,
little one. I like that. I have that
yeah.
one and it's a good carver.
Yeah. So that's the carving tool that seems to work for me. I'm not the most skilled carver. I will admit that myself. It's more of a recent thing that I'm trying to get into. So pardon my not so clean lines, but yeah. So it's a great tool. I encourage you to get it if that's something that you're into or into trying. What other questions?
So what happens if you get the color on the black line? Does it fade the black line? So if someone doesn't carve it away?
Yeah, so if you're not carving it away, so like I was showing in this piece, I actually had gone outside of the lines. It might fade it a bit, but essentially there's I want to say iron oxide, some type of iron within the black pigment that really makes it pop through the color. So even if you do get color on it, it will show through.
And you've got some discount codes. I just want to pop this in now. I know we still got 5 minutes, but
Yeah.
go to clayshare.com, everybody. And if you go over to ClayShareCon info, you can see all the deals and promos. And Nikki has two great offers right now. She's got, if you spend over $25 US, you have a code. If you spend over 35 Canadian, you have a code to save 15% off, and it's CSC 2025. So
Yeah.
CSC, all caps 2025. And
And so
that's through the 24th of this month.
yes, that's right. And so the other thing I wanted to mention is that also applies to all the other products. So I also carry Speedball products and Glaze. So if you're looking to score some glazes at a discount, that's also totally applicable. But also there's a ton of designs available for you to peruse as far as the transfers are concerned.
You have
And
some very fun transfers,
I
very like,
tried.
yeah, I think they're very now. So if you're making your pottery to sell at markets to the public and you want to get the latest, like what people are after, you need to get Ceramica transfers. She's on the cusp of what's trending. So not that they're
I
always trying to be
tried.
trending, but it's nice when you're selling stuff, you want what people want to buy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do my best to kind of stay up on what the market is into so that um, folks that are buying my products can also be right there and ready with the right products for their customers.
And is it possible to color in on the actual paper when then transfer all of it to your clay?
You can, but I think for that type of application, you would be better off using like slips. I think Malin did a presentation earlier this
She
morning
did.
using slips. So Malin, if those of you who missed it from Plum Island Transfers, she's wonderful, and I think for me that application is more a slip-based application where you're really like using that as your background.
Exactly. And so this person lives in Burlington, Ontario, and they want to know if they can visit your studio.
Yeah, come on over
Come on
anytime.
over.
Yeah, just message me.
All right. So the discount, does it apply to Etsy purchases? They're
It
on her. Go
it
ahead.
does. Yeah, so it unfortunately Etsy fees are quite high, so I can't offer a discount on Etsy, but it is applicable to our Canadian and our American site.
And are these food safe if you use a food safe clear glaze or any food safe over them?
Yeah, absolutely. They are food safe. There's no problem there.
Do you have YouTube tutorials?
I don't, but it's definitely something to consider for the future. But I'm also a very accessible person. So if ever you have any questions or anything you want to do, I mean, I've gone so far as hopped on a FaceTime with a customer to go over something if you need something. Like I'm very accessible.
Wonderful. All right. So we only got 2 more minutes with Nikki. This is your chance to get the answers straight from the source, all about underglaze transfers. If you've got questions, she's got answers. Oh, here's one. How do you prevent the transfers from flaking off?
Okay. So when that happens, in my opinion, it's a bad sheet. And so what's the context in which that's happened? Like, was it after bisque? Was it at Glaze? Like, it really depends on the application. And if that's the outcome that you're getting, you really need to contact me and I'll help you through that. Most likely it's not an application issue, it's probably a product issue in that circumstance.
And can they be stored for longer than 6 months?
Absolutely. If you store them in a sealed plastic container or bag out of the sunlight, I have transfers that I've had for 5 years, like plus you can use them. The only thing is, if they dry out too much, then the issue is it's tough to get them off the page. But for the most part, yeah, I have ones that I've had for years and years, and they work just fine if you take care
And
of them.
if you take, yeah, I have, I mean, I know some companies say 6 months, but I have decals that are 5, 6 years old. I'm still using
Yeah.
like that just, I keep them sealed in plastic and I've had no issues with them. Oh, I have a question. So what cone do you need to fire them to if you do not want to put a glaze on top?
Oh, that's a great question. So these are not fully cured until cone 6. So you can use them at low fire. However, you do need to add a glaze on top. Once you hit cone 6, they're fully cured, and you're fine to continue without a glaze.
Perfect. All right. And how can folks reach you?
Through my website, there's a chat function. If I don't answer right away on the chat, then it'll send me an email and I will email you back. You can email me back, or even my phone number is on the site. I've had people call me, it's no problem. Or shoot me an email. My email is info@ceramicatransfers.com. And I'm happy to hear from all of you.
Awesome. All right. And we can find you on Instagram at Ceramica Transfer.
That's right.
All right. And or just go to ceramicatransfer.com so you can find her on our website. Nikki, thank you. It was such a great
Thanks so
demo.
much for
Lots of
having me.
ideas. So informative. And Nikki's the best for customer service. So if you have any questions, reach out to her. Thank you so much for being part of ClayShareCon.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you. All right.
So Nikki is amazing. If you have any issues or any questions, please
reach out. That's all you have to do. Just reach out to her. She will help you. She will answer your questions. And if you have any problems, she will solve them for you. So super huge thank you to Nikki from Ceramica Transfers for her presentation and for her fabulous giveaway of 100 sheets of underglaze transfers and the discount code that she has. All the discount codes are on clayshare.com under ClayShareCon info. You just scroll down and you can find it all there. If you haven't entered in our giveaways, you have just a tiny bit more time, so you better do it. If you're a premium member of ClayShare, you're automatically entered. Everybody else, go to clayshare.com and sign up for our email list, and you will be entered in the giveaway. So we're going to have a little bit of a break, and then we're going to be back. Ooh, who's next? Who's coming up at 3 o'clock? This Jessica Putnam-Phillips from ClayShare. She's going to be doing textured rollers and templates to make some trays with handles and feet. So come back and join me for that.